Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Shreshtam Manumapi Shakti Putram Atra Swarupam Rupam Tasyagrajam Urupuring Maturim Goshtavartim Radha Kundam Girivaramaho Radhika Madhavasham Prapto Yasya Pratita Kripaya Shri Gurum Tamnatosmi Vandeham Shri Guru Shriyatah Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavang Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Guru Vaishnav Bhagavan Tines Varne Hoy Bigna Binashan Anayashe Hoy Nijavan Chita Puran Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Visnu-sahasranama, name 993 is Sankha-bhrt. Shankha means conch and Bhrt, various meanings, but generally as the holder. So the holder of the conch. Now, coming to the end of the names, in the last verse of the Vishnu Sahasranama. After that there's the Phala Shruti, but the actual names just coming to an end. And in these 8 names in this verse, which are accepted by all the commentators, pretty much all the commentators, except there are 8 names in this verse. And 7 of them are directly concerned with weapons of Vishnu. Seven of them are very clearly and directly connected with his weapons. But you might think, wait a minute, the conch, is that a weapon? We'll get to that. Sri Vaishnavas understand that all of these, we also accept, all of these weapons of the Lord are great devotees. Because everything in the spiritual existence is conscious, which means personality. It's not undifferentiated consciousness. Everything and everyone serves Krishna consciously. And in Sri Vaishnava tradition, the weapons of the Lord are identified with various of the Arlavas, or those who great devotees who appeared before Sri Ramanujacharya and who composed prayers to him, which are now compiled in the Divya Prabandham. I made some inquiries as to why the Vishnu Sahasranama finishes with the weapons, or names relating to the weapons of the Lord. I didn't ask Mayavadis, I just asked some Sri Vaishnavas, or via Sri Srinivas Prabhu, and they said there's no particular reason. But I thought of something, whoever I may be. Bhishma Dev is speaking this Vishnu Sahasranama to Yudhishthira Maharaj in the presence of Devaki Nandan, Krishna personally. whose name he's just given as one of the names of Vishnu, Devaki Nandan. And although he expresses his appreciation of the Vraja Lila, Krishna in Vraja Lila, in his prayers, we'll find in the Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 9, I believe it is, where Bhishma Dev is departing, and he expresses his appreciation of Krishna and his appreciation of Krishna's pastimes with the gopis. But here, of course, these names are eternal also. Bhishma Dev didn't make them up. But by having these weapons names, he's emphasizing his own attraction to Vishnu, and particularly the biggest moment of his life, Bhishma Dev, a very eventful life, very glorious life, in devotion to Krishna and duty to his family and country, although there wasn't so much concept of nations as we have them now. That's recent, actually. That wasn't there until maybe around with the decay of monarchy, of absolute monarchy, the concept of nations came in. Otherwise, there was fidelity to the monarch, not particular, and the boundaries may change. And languages were different every few miles. So Bhishma Dev, the biggest moment of his life was being attacked by Krishna. He's in his predominant bliss in relationship with Krishna, Vira Rasa, that of heroism. So he likes to see the Lord with his weapons. In his prayers, he's praying to depart from the world in the presence of Krishna, which he's just about to do as he's saying these prayers. He says, "May my Lord, who is four-handed," he's speaking to Krishna, or about Krishna, who's generally two-handed, but Bhishma sees him as four-handed. "May my Lord, who is four-handed and whose beautifully decorated lotus face, with eyes as red as the rising sun, is smiling, kindly await me at that moment when I quit this material body." So he likes the weaponized Vishnu. That word is used as don't weaponize. It's the woke crowd like this word, weaponize. But Bhishma, he knows Krishna has his flute, but he likes him with weapons. You don't get the two things at the same time. When Krishna fights in Vrindavan, he puts the flute, tucks it in. Doesn't put it aside, but he doesn't kill anyone with his flute. He does worse things than that. So then a Sankha-bhrt, then Nandaki is the next name in relation to his sword, Chakri in relation to his disc weapon, Shangadhanva in relation to his bow, Gadadhara in relation to his club, Ratanga Pani in relation to his picking up the wheel of the chariot and using that as a weapon. Then the penultimate name is Akshobhya, which doesn't directly relate to any weapons. And the final name is, the final name doesn't specifically mention any weapon. It's Sarva Praharna Ayudha, who has all kinds of weapons. So a few principal weapons are mentioned. Now we're discussing Shankha, who in the Padma Purana is stated that just as Ramachandra is Narayana, Lakshman is Shesha, Bharat is Chakra, and Shatrunghna is Shankha, is the conch. And this is mentioned throughout the Bhagavatam. If we were to read all the references, then we'd be here for a very long time. And often the references to the conch is mentioned in relation to his form in general, because whenever we see the form of Vishnu, the conch is going to be there. In the Bhagavatam, a description of the Lord appearing in the sacrificial arena of Daksha. His yajna, his sacrifice is very famous, but after all of that fighting and so on, then Vishnu appeared. His complexion was blackish, his garment yellow like gold, and his helmet as dazzling as the sun. His hair was bluish, the color of black bees, and his face was decorated with earrings. His 8 hands held a conch shell, wheel, club, lote club. That's coming up. Lotus flower, arrow, bow, shield, and sword, and they were decorated with golden ornaments such as bangles and bracelets. So the first mentions conch shell. His whole wheel resembled a blossoming tree, beautifully decorated with various kinds of flowers. The devotees, they like to hear about this and describe his form. We'll find in Bhagavatam and other shastras again and again and again his form is described. That might not be considered very good literature to repeat it in the modern novels are there, right? You don't describe the person again, what they look like again and again and again. It's, well, I already got that, right? We know it's acquiring knowledge, information, get it all in. This is not, maybe the first time, it's knowledge, information, but this is simply for relishing, again and again and again. In the Bhagavatam also it's stated that the conch looks like a swan in his lotus-like palm. Swan very white like a swan, like most swans. Even though Bhagavan has many weapons that decorate him. They're weapons for the demons, but the devotees see them as decorations. But particularly 5 are mentioned, and the Shankha is always one of them. Vedanta Deshika has described 16 weapons in the hands of Lord Sudarshan in the Shodashayudha Stotram, and the Pancha, the 5 weapons are described in the Panchayudha Stotram by himself. So he has them, the devotees see them as decorations, these weapons, and he carries them for the protection of his devotees and the destruction of the devotees' enemies. Namalava, the most prolific in terms of composing prayers among the Arlavas, he, due to his intense love for the Lord, becomes very concerned that he has to carry all these weapons, very heavy. Peri Arlava sang, "May the Lord live a long life." He gave him blessings. And Namalva says he's carrying all these heavy weapons. Someone should help him. Thinking it's too much for him. That's like we see Govardhan Lila. Krishna's holding up Govardhan Hill, and all the cowherd men think, it's only a little boy, he's holding this, we should help him. And they put their sticks to help hold up the hill, and then Krishna just takes his finger away for a little time, and it all starts to fall, then he puts his finger up again. But out of love, he's thinking, oh, it's so heavy, how can he have all these big, huge weapons? And he's also concerned, why doesn't someone help him carry these weapons? Everyone's busy praying to him, give me this, give me that. Why don't they do something to help him carry the weapons? Do some service. They're praying for this and praying for that, but he's the one who should be prayed for. That's what we really want to get, isn't it? Vishnu Purana describes that the weapons that Bhagavan holds on his divine body, they represent various tattvas or principles involved in the creation of the universe and the beings here. And that's also described in Bhagavatam, in the 12th canto, that the club that the Lord carries is the chief element pran, because without pran, life, then there's no meaning to the universe. Yedam dharyate jagat, it's the living beings who keep it going. Jagat means that which goes, that which moves, but it's the living beings that keep them moving along. So the club represents prana, incorporating the potencies of sensory, mental and physical strength. His excellent conch shell represents the element water. One use of, we know in the aritis to the Lord, the conch, two conches, one is for blowing and one is for offering water. His sudarshan chakra is the element fire, and his sword, pure as the sky, is the element ether. His shield embodies the mode of ignorance, which is the basic principle of existence in this world. You can say the basic principle of existence is the Lord himself, it's the material energy, you can say it's prana, you can say it's the living beings, and from one perspective it's the mode of ignorance, so we're all in ignorance here. Ajnana timirand, we're all in the darkness of ignorance. And his arrow-filled quiver is the working sensory organs. That's the karmendriyas. In summary, the chakra symbolizes, because it moves very quickly, so it symbolizes the mind. It's always chanchalam, himana, Krsna. Mind is always moving. The Shankha, which we're going, I'm just, before getting into all these names, I'm just giving a little overview of all of them, and then going through each one individually. So the conch, that, this is another description, is the tamasa ahankara, the egoism, which has arisen from deep, dull ignorance. And out of this, the 5 mahabhutas, the 5 great elements, earth, water, air, fire, and ether, have appeared. And from this comes also sound, which is the tanmatra, or the sensory, the object of perception, which is at the first stage before akash appears, before ether. And that is the sound emanating from the conch of Vishnu. Gada represents buddhi, which, unlike the mind, which is always moving, is very solid. So it's a stabilizing factor. Shanga, the bow, is sattvic, represents the 5 karma indriyas and the 5 jnana indriyas. So the senses by which we work and the senses by which we perceive. And Shanga, apart from being the bow in the hand of the Lord, is the controlling force for all the senses. Nandaki is written here. Nandaka is the sword representing Brahma Vidya, spiritual knowledge. The sheath in which that sword goes is the controlling force that controls avidya. So this will be discussed later in the discussion of all these names. That shining sword of Achyuta is divine knowledge, and unless it's brought out, it's concealed within the sheath or the scabbard of ignorance. So it's there, but we don't see it most of the time. So Lord Vishnu, he has his weapons and his ornaments, and he comes in this world, and everything about him is meant for the good of the world. Everything is done for his own pleasure and simultaneously for the benefit of all living beings in the world, which is also his pleasure. He likes that. Many gods in the, as they call it, the Hindu pantheon. They all have their different weapons. But these ones which Vishnu has, they're unique to him. After Arjuna sees Krishna's universal form, he requests Krishna, all right, I asked to see this, enough. Now I want to see your 4-handed form. Kiritinam gadinam chakrahastam ichhami tvam drashtam aham tataiva tenaiva rupena chaturbe pujena sahasra-bhaho bhava vishvamurte. So I want to see that form now with the helmet, the club, and the wheel in the hand, which means also, of course, but these particularly mention the weapons, 2 weapons, and the other 2 hands are the Shankha, which operates as a weapon, and in other ways also, which we'll get through to, and the lotus, which are for the devotees. So Sankha-bhrt means who holds the conch, supports the conch, nourishes the conch. The conch sound heralds a challenge, we find at the beginning of the Kurukshetra war. It's a challenge, a call to fight. It's also a sign of victory. When one great warrior is killed, we'll find in the battle, all the warriors on the other side, they blow their conches. So it's a sign of rejoicing, sign of victory. Auspiciousness. Also when Krishna enters Dwaraka after being away in Hastinapur, he sounds his conch, so it's like ringing the doorbell, something like that. I'm coming. Drives away all inauspiciousness. That was a common practice I saw in Bengal, and probably it was in most of India, that in the evening, every evening in the village, the women will blow the conch and intersperse that with the uludhani, which some of you who are non-Bengalis may like to learn to do also, although the general tendency for Indian women coming here is to become less cultured, and men also, to lose their culture. But that's also very auspicious, and they'll go around with incense and dhuna, this scented, what's that called, frankincense, burning on the at the evening time, at dusk, because that is the time when the inauspicious spirits start to wander around. So that drives it out. Srila Prabhupada, he was very happy when there was one Shastri came and joined him for some time in Mayapur, and he used to go around all the buildings blowing the conch and reciting Vedic mantras for auspiciousness at this time. This in this Tulsi, this story of Tulsi's how she came to the material world. At the end of that, it stated that the sound of the conch is always auspicious, except when blown by a woman. It's there in Shastra, but I see that in Bengal at least, it's very, very common that they blow it. So Srila Prabhupada, he liked to introduce all these different usages or traditional usages. They all have their point. It's a whole culture. There is some kind of idea going around that we should strip Krishna consciousness of all its traditional cultural moorings and just keep to the essence, which is chanting Hare Krishna and wearing jeans, isn't it? Something like that. But everything in the Vedic culture has a purpose. It's Krishna's culture. That's how Krishna likes to live. And it helps to prepare us for joining the spiritual world. There was an advertisement years ago in Australia for jeans, not Levi's. There's some other company, I can't remember, famous. Wrangler. It's still going. Is it still going around? Yeah. Wrangler jeans. So they did it because the devotees doing Harinam Sankirtan were quite a sensation. It was quite common in the streets of Australia and America and New Zealand at that time. You get all these Hare Krishna devotees going around the streets. And it was something quite unusual at the time. And people were having a hard time working out what it's all about. And so advertisement companies, they're always trying to think of something different to attract your attention because there are so many advertisements and no one bothers looking at them. In Italy, they just have naked women, and that's the sure way to attract attention. I don't know now. I haven't been there for a long time. Right, huge billboards right on the highway. So the Wrangler company had all the devotees in their orange with their drums, and so everyone knows what it is. And they had one of them had a Wrangler jacket on, and the motto was given, "I ain't going unless I can wear my Wrangler." But there's a problem with that. If you want to go back to the spiritual world, there are no Wranglers in the spiritual world. No Wrangler. Wrangler, actually, the meaning is someone who disputes. They engage in useless arguments just for the sake of arguing. Now, actually, there are. The gopis do that, right, with Krishna. But not in Vaikuntha, but in this. But not that kind. Definitely not this kind of Western dress. So, this idea that you wear Western dress and chant Hare Krishna. All right, in the beginning, just add Krishna. But if you want to get more serious, then get into Krishna's culture. You all came from Krishna's culture, most of you. But the tendency is to think everything's great in America. Yeah, everything's greatly going in the wrong direction. So we should take, what is it? What is it we should take? This Anda Pangunyai. The India at that time was, Srila Prabhupada always used this, it was crippled economically, and America had strength. So militarily, economically, so Srila Prabhupada said that the taking the knowledge of India with the material resources of America, we should preach Krishna consciousness. Just like a lame man and a blind man, they can't, neither of them can go to where, if they have to go somewhere, neither of them can go, because one can't see where to go and the other physically can't move. So combined, the strong blind man carries the crippled man, and in this way, the crippled man says, "Go here, go there," and the strong blind man carries him. So it's a great mistake to think that we have any philosophy or any culture to adopt. Some things could be. Some things. Organizational ability is good. Civic cleanliness is better in America than in India. So some things, but really the original culture of what is now called India is the culture reflecting the spiritual world. And that's not my speculation, that's right there in Brihad Bhagavatamrita. So better to keep with that. Getting back to Conch, Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 28, Text 27. Yeah, I already mentioned that. The conch looks like a swan in his lotus-like palm. Different references, there are many references. I'll just take a few from the Bhagavatam. When Krishna, Bhima and Arjuna, having slain Jarasandha, came back to Indraprastha, no one knew. They'd gone, they hadn't come back for a long time, and no one knew what has happened. So you don't know, there's no news. Because Krishna is executing his worldly pastimes, they have thought, well, Jarasandha is a mighty king, and Krishna defeated him 17 times, but the 18th time he didn't, and they just went there, just Krishna, Bhima, Arjuna, and Satyaki also went there. There's maybe some others also, but specifically in the Bhagavatam said these three. So they went to his place, and you know what happened? They're in anxiety, but then they heard the conch. And people who've heard the different conches, they'll know that by the sound, this is Krishna's conch. Just like if you have a herd of cows, when you're with them, day in, day out, you'll know when the cow lows. That's what they do, they moo. What lows? Does a cow low or some other animal? I can't remember. When the cow moos, you can know which cow it is exactly, because you hear again and again all the different cows. So you know which cow it is. So when they hear Krishna's, they hear the sound, oh, that's Krishna. Krishna came back! Means Jarasandha is killed. And it's stated in the Bhagavatam, when Krishna, Bhima and Arjuna all blew their conch shells, that it brought joy to their friends and sorrow to their enemies. So there were still enemies in Indraprastha at that time, or then or around. And they knew that the Magadharaj, Jarasandha, had been killed, and Yudhishthira, they thought, this is... Because he wanted to do this Rajasuya Yagya, but he couldn't do it as long as Jarasandha was alive. So now he knows Jarasandha is dead, and we can proceed with the Rajasuya Yagya. So Yudhishthira especially felt very happy. The conch, pure white in color, don't let it get dirty. Sometimes we see the conch is not being cleaned since it was bought. Keep everything clean. Which it is the very symbol of sattva guna, of unalloyed goodness. And thus, in goodness, sattvam sanjayate jnanam. From goodness comes knowledge. Everything else is ignorance. This mode of passion mixed with ignorance, American culture, is for cultivating ignorance. People are working, and sometimes they go to the bar. Or there's so many ways have been invented for enjoying yourself. So either you work, or I used to see in Bangalore a few years ago some advertisement for something, but the slogan was "Work hard, party harder." To cover your consciousness so you don't stop to think. Life should be lived slowly so you can contemplate, be in the mode of goodness, and start. But people don't want to think. It's dangerous to think. Thinking is horrible. You were telling me last night. Whatever you do, you can think how to make a new app or make something new for Google and get a pay rise, and think how to stab your office mates in the back so you get the promotion and they... That kind of thinking. But actually thinking, considering, what am I doing with my life? That kind of thinking, don't. So just work, and just don't think, just forget. I've several times told this anecdote that my godbrother, Purna Chandraprabhu, there were more than one, and they both passed away. But he told me he lived in London for many years. So he was a householder, he lived outside the temple. So every morning I'd go for Mangalarti, and he would often see, especially at the weekend, in the next apartment, as he's going out for Mangalarti, the single woman who's living there, she's coming back. He's going out, it's night and day, different for the self-realized and the realized. And often he'd see her going in, every week there'd be a different male companion. So one time he spoke to her and he said somewhat, little sarcastic, so you live a very active life. He said, yes. And he looked her in the eye and said, are you happy? And she stopped for a moment, then she burst into tears. It struck her, it was like a lightning bolt in her consciousness. They weren't tears of happiness. People are suffering. Don't believe people are happy. They're suffering. Therefore, sarva bhute hite rataha. We should always be engaged, busy, welfare work for others. So, Shuddha Sattva gives wisdom, not just knowledge. Knowledge, learning more and more things, but wisdom. A great example of this is of Dhruva Maharaj, a young boy, hadn't been to Gurukul. He had to pray to the Lord, but he wanted to say something in praise of Vishnu, who had appeared in front of him, but what will he say? He's tongue-tied and just touched with the conch, and then so many beautiful prayers arise from his heart. We know from Bhagavatam that Shukracharya went against Bali. Because Bali went against Shukra in the matter of giving everything to Vamanadev, Vishnu. And although it's not mentioned in the Bhagavatam, it's known that when Bali was about to pour water from his vessel in the spout, he was about to pour water into the hands of Vamanadev, which is the way of solidifying the oath. So Shukra was so concerned about this that he reduced his body, Shukra reduced his body so small that he entered the spout and stopped the hole so the water couldn't come out. To remove the blockage, if there's a block, you put a little straw in. Theoretically, Vamanadev didn't know that Shukra was there. So he put the straw into the hole to push out the little bit of grit or whatever it was, actually it was Shukra, which struck his eye. And then Shukra left in tremendous pain and the water flowed. Then Shukra, understanding his mistake, afterward he went. This is in Nrsimha Purana and other Puranas. We have in the Bhagavatam, whatever narrations are there, they're usually concise and they're explained in more detail elsewhere. So Shukra performed austerities standing in the Ganga with upraised hands, with his mind fixed on Lord Vamana, offering prayers to Vamanadev, who came and asked, "What are you praying for?" As if he didn't know. Shukra begged forgiveness from the Lord for having tried to dissuade Bali from fulfilling the wish of Vamanadev, and Vaman then touched his conch shell to Shukra's eye, which immediately healed it, and in this way Shukra was pardoned for his offense. Now we know that the specific name of this conch is Panchajanya. Panchajanya Hrishikesha, mentioned in the beginning of, well, actually before the Gita actually begins in chapter 1, that Hrishikesh, Krishna blew his Panchajanya. We find also in Bhagavatam and elsewhere is described that there was a demon in the form of a conch in the water called Panchajana, and by slaying him, he took the conch in which the demon was residing. This is described in the 10th canto of Bhagavatam. The Supreme Lord Krishna addressed the Lord of the ocean because the son of his guru, Sandipani Muni, had drowned in the ocean at Prabhas. So Krishna and Balaram went to tell the ocean god, "Give the son of my guru, the one you took away by your waves. You took him away." The ocean replied, "It wasn't me. There was a Daitya, a demoniac descendant of Diti called Panchajana, who travels in the water in the form of a conch." So Krishna entered the ocean and found Panchajana and killed him, but he didn't find the boy. Then he took the conch, which had grown around the demon's body, something like a snail, you could say. That's called an exoskeleton. Tortoise, snail, conch. They don't have an inside skeleton, but the bone is outside. So Lord Janardhan took the conch shell and went back to the chariot, and then he went to Sangyamini, the capital of Yamaraj, the Lord of Death. Upon arriving there with Balaram, he loudly blew his conch shell. So that's the first time. First time mentioned anyway. And Yamaraj came and worshipped the Lord, the two Lords. And in this way, the pastime went on. So he took the conch and immediately wanted to use it to herald his presence and also remind Yamaraj that you are the king down here and no one goes against you, and no one once someone's come here, they don't go back until you release them. But I've come here now and I'm your boss and you have to do what I say. In the purport it's mentioned that that Panchajana became a demon in the same way that Jai and Vijay became a demon, by a curse. So sometimes devotees, they may be Jai and Vijay, they became demons by a curse. There are other examples also. What happens when Lord Krishna sounded his conch shell? When the Lord sounded his conch shell outside the kingdom of Yamaraj, what happened? Asi patra vanang nama shirna patram ajayata Rauravang nama narakam arauravam abhutada abhairavam bhairava kyam kumbhipakam apachakam. Some things that happened, that the hell known as Asi Patravana. Asi means sword, Patra means leaf. So and Vanam means forest. So in that forest, in hell, there are trees with leaves as sharp as swords, and then you're pushed through. So your body is cut again and again. But all that quality of Asi Patravanam just finished by the blowing of the conch. Raurava, there's one hell called Raurava because it's full of ruru beasts. And it became Rauravam Namanarakam Aroravam Abhutada. At that time, all the rurus ran away. So it became Arourava. I'm going to make a note of that also. Seems to be a spelling mistake, may or may not be. In the hell known as Bhairav, which is very fearful, became full of fear got lost. And in Kumbhi Park, in which the sinful people are cooked in a big pot, the cooking stopped. Skanda Purana further states, this is all because of the sound of the conch. Papa kshayat tata sarve vimukta naraka naraha padam avyayam asadya. Their sinful reactions eradicated, all the inhabitants of hell attained liberation and approached the spiritual world. So now you know why Yamaraj tells his followers, if you see anyone chanting Hare Krishna, run away. Because if you bring them down here, then Krishna might come again and then I'll lose my job. So we're discussing the weapons of the Lord, beginning with the conch. Doesn't seem like much of a weapon. Theoretically it could be used. You could hit someone on the head with a conch. I guess you could annihilate ants with a conch. But generally as a weapon, it doesn't seem very fearful. It doesn't have the cutting edge like a sword. Or it doesn't discharge arrows like a bow. or if you want to hit someone, then the club is a better weapon, right? Vishnu has a club, so that's more effective if you want to smite him ad infinitum, then use a club. Yeah, that's from my religious education. God speaking, I will smite him ad infinitum. One song we used to sing. But the power of the conch is such that hearing that, the enemies feel afraid. So it's psychological warfare, you can say. Because they know he's here, well, that means the bow and the arrows and the discus and that stated that when the Krishna and the Pandavas blew their conches, immediately the other party, the Kauravas, they felt great trepidation. Which the Kauravas blew their conches, that didn't happen to the Pandavas. So it's a warm-up, so to speak, just preparing. Makes it easier. If your opponents are already fearful, it makes them easier to kill. If they're fearful so that they're afraid to fight with you. Also, he's holding a conch and blowing it. He could be faulted because he said he wouldn't hold any weapon. But this, even without a weapon, what's considered normally a weapon, his conch in itself is more fearful to the enemies than all the powerful weapons that they may have. The blowing of these different conch shells became uproarious, and thus vibrating both in the sky and on the earth, it shattered the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra. Some quotes from Srila Prabhupada's books and from Bhagavatam. This is when at Pragjyotishapur, Narakasura, then there were all the different fortifications around the cities, including the yantras, which are yantra can mean machine, or it can mean mystical diagram. So the city, there were fortifications of water, fencing, and there was the yantras, one fortification of yantras. Now, Krishna came with Satyabhama flying on Garuda, right? So he could have just flown over all of them, right? That's an easy way to go in, right? He didn't have to bother with, but he thought, well, that's not so honorable. Let's show that we're superior in every respect. So he destroyed all the different fortifications by the blowing of his conch. Shankanadena yantrani, the blowing of his conch, because that mystic potency, that black magic potency, is shattered by the sound of Vishnu's conch. Again, you see, there's black magic. Some people don't believe in it, but it's real. And we need a good dose of auspicious things to destroy that. Jai Shakal Bipod Bhakti Vinod Bolen Jokal Onam Gai. Just by chanting the name of Krishna, all inauspicious things, all dangers go away. So by blowing the conch, Krishna destroyed the mystic potencies that were in the form of yantras, which were protecting the city. And at the same time, he shattered the hearts of the defenders of the city inside. Murari, we know this name, common name of Vishnu, but the Mura demon, we don't hear much about him, except that he's sleeping at Pragjyotishapur. At least in Bhagavatam, we don't hear much about him. And he had 5 heads. He was sleeping at the bottom of the city's moat. When he heard the sound of the Panchajanya, his conch shell, is very such a penetrating sound, is described in Bhagavatam, a sound as terrifying as the thunder at the end of the cosmic age. So at the time of universal devastation, the sound of the thunder. So he rose up out of the water that woke him up. Described in Narayan Kavacha, or prayed to in Narayan Kavacha also, in the 6th canto of Bhagavatam. Tvam yatu dhana pramata pretama tri pishacha vipragraha ghaura drishtin Darendra vidravaya Krishna purito bhimasvano rare hridayani kampayan. O best of the conch shells, O Panchajanya in the hands of the Lord, you are always filled with the breath of Lord Krishna. Therefore you create a fearful sound vibration that causes trembling in the hearts of enemies, like the Rakshasas, Pramata ghosts, Pretas, Matas, Pishachas, and Brahmana ghosts with fearful eyes. Sahasranama, in describing the previous, in elaborating on the previous 992 names, has throughout in his commentary emphasized Bhagavan's Saulabhyam, that he's easy to attain for his devotees. Ananya cheta satatam yomam smarti nitya saha tasyaham sulabham partha nitya yoktasya yoginaha. Krishna is very easy to attain for the devotees who are always thinking of him. And his Soshilyam, his very pleasing and beautiful character. So in his commentary, Sahasranama, and the last 8 names, he reminds us that although the Lord, he says that these final names describing the weapons of the Lord, or the Lord in relation to his weapons, just to remind us firmly that although he has these qualities by which he comes among us and interacts with us personally, but don't forget, he's the Supreme Lord of all the universes. Parama Aishvarya Chinna Divya Ayudhatvat. The weapons, his weapons, they indicate his supreme overlordship and supremacy. At the same time, Sahasranama explains these names in a manner that these weapons evoke feelings of devotion in his devotees. So he says, Sahasranama says that Sankha-bhrt means that Supreme Lord who is supporting, holding, nourishing the conch. How does he do that? With the nectar from his mouth. Adharamritam. The nectar from his lips. And of course, in Gopi Leela, this nectar from his lips is considered in a much more intimate way. There's a whole chapter in Chaitanya Charitamrita of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu relishing the nectar from Krishna's lips in the form of Jagannath Prasad, and then it goes on to explain. This nectar from his lips, in the same way, Andal, who is the Lord's consort in his four-handed form, or apart from Lakshmi and Andal, she, just like the gopis say, what is this flute? We are always anxious for the nectar of Krishna's lips by kissing them. And this flute, which is just some dry, hard piece of wood, always gets the nectar of his lips and we hardly ever get it at all. Something wrong in the cosmic order here. It's meant for us, but there's what is. Not only that, but when Krishna, the flute is so envious of us that not only is he tasting the nectar, but through the sound he attacks us. It makes us more keen to get it. It's like mocking us. I've got it, you haven't. So similarly, Andal has a whole long prayer in praise of the Lord's Conch. Just like, this Vedanta Deshika made 1,000 prayers. He was thinking, I have to praise the Lord. Which part should I praise? The feet? No, that's too elevated for me. I'll praise his shoes. So he has 1,000 prayers to his padukas. You got to be spiritually inspired, right? 1,000. So Andal enviously describes how the Conch is always blessed to be with him, even more fortunate than Sudarshan, who has to go away sometimes. Right? He has to go away. Why is Sudarshan so quick? Because he wants to do his job and get back as soon as he can. Doesn't want to be away so long. That's one reason why he's so quick. Go and do this. Okay. Done. Go all the way from Dwarka to Varanasi, destroy the whole city. Yep. Next job. No, he doesn't want the next job. He wants to be there all the time. But they... so the conch is always in his hand, and then for nourishment goes to his mouth and enjoys the nectar of his lips. So like a baby, it's in the mother's hand and sometimes held at the breast, and the mother always keeps the baby with her, and both mother and child are very happy with that. Of course, that doesn't apply in America, where women don't have children, or if they have them, they don't want to look after them because they have to go to work. So she describes, Andal describes, about the tastiness of the Lord's lips, which is tasted by the conch. His beautiful coral reddish lips and his fragrant mouth, they come in direct contact with the conch, and he gets this very nice taste, which is meant for his consorts. Bilva Mangal Thakur says, O Rangaraj, lover of sweets, what tastes sweetest to you today? Freshly churned butter? Krishna likes that. The breast of Putana? Everything Krishna does he enjoys, right? So he enjoyed the breast of Putana. The sacrificial offerings of the learned Brahmanas? Meals from Vidura? The reins of your devotees' horses? Your conch shell? What's something else Krishna likes the taste of? His own toes, right? He likes that, yeah. He's lying on the banyan leaf and thinking, as a baby, thinking that my devotees, they always hanker for the taste of my toes. Must be pretty good. Let's try it out. So he does. And then you see young human babies up to the present time, they imitate and put their toes in their mouths. The lines on Krishna's navel are compared to those on a conch. It means he has full belly. Baby Krishna. Or maybe bigger Krishna. He's not one of these muscle men from the gym. He's a little fatty. In the Bhagavatam, Krishna is described returning to Dwarka. Sutta Goswami said, 11th chapter of the first canto, upon reaching the border of his most prosperous metropolis, known as the country of the Anarthas, Dwarka, the Lord sounded his auspicious conch shell, heralding his arrival. So that's another usage. And apparently pacifying the separation of the inhabitants. They became so happy. Krishna's back. The white and fat-boweled conch shell, being gripped by the reddish hand of Lord Krishna and sounded by him, appeared to be reddened more by the touch of his transcendental lips. It seemed that a white swan was playing in the stems of red lotus flowers. The citizens of Dwarka, having heard that sound which threatens fear personified in the material world, began to run toward him fast, just to have a long-desired audience with the Lord, who is the protector of all his devotees. So all the bad elements run away on hearing or they become very fearful, the demons, and devotees become very happy. In England in the 1970s, we often used to go on, we'd go on Harinam Sankirtan, and sometimes some demoniac people would come physically wanting to attack the devotees. So at that time, the devotees would sound the conch, chant Nrsimha prayers, and inevitably they'd run away. At one time they didn't, and then the devotees attacked them with the cartels. And this is just in my experience, and they're all bloodied up and everything. Don't mess with the Hare Krishnas. It's not all love and peace. Shankaracharya explains this name. Panchajanyakyam bhutan ahankaratmakam shankam vibrat Sankha-bhrt. He, Vishnu, is the bearer of the conch shell called the Panchajanya, which is, here's stands for, but it practically is composed of the tamasa ahankara, from which the 5 elements are born. Bhagavatam, again, getting back to the Bhagavatam, 8th canto, Parjanya ghosho jalaja panchajanya. The sound vibration of his conch, jalaja. Jalaja means born in the water, so it's a name for the conch. The sound vibration of this is like the clouds, thunder clouds. Radha Krishna Shastri, another commentator, says that the sound coming from his Panchajanya has the effect of removing ignorance in the minds of the devotees, as well as driving away. So inside the devotees, the enemy is ignorance, foolishness, egoism, and the powerful external enemies, they're also put in fear. The devotees become fearless by hearing his conch, and the non-devotees become fearful. So he both protects and destroys via his conch. In the temples, the conch is blown during the worship, beginning and ending the arati. I used to see sometimes that people living a little distance, not very distant from the temple, this was the conch would be blown for the arati, and the people would put their hand to their head. If they're not personally attending, hand to the head like this, beginning and end. You can hear. So in this way, he wakens us up, creates spiritual awareness in us. It's a spiritual call, the sound of the conch. Hey, come to the arati. Arati is going on. Don't sleep during Mangalarti. Get up. Jeev Jago. What's the beginning of spiritual life? When does spiritual life begin? 4 o'clock in the morning. That's every day, right? Or earlier if you like. Lakshmi is the goddess of the Shankha, particularly we know of the Shankha with the left turning is called Lakshmi Conch, which devotees became very excited when they found out that this rare conch brings money. And they asked, can we keep on the altar? Prabhupada said, yeah, if you like, don't worship it, that's all. And Baladev Vidyabhushan, his commentary it repeats that the Shankha, it indicates the characteristic of the Supreme Lord as the sustainer of everything and the protector of everything. That sound is symbolic of his being the sustainer and the protector of everything. And therefore Baladev Vidyabhushan says he is called Sankha-bhrt because he holds the Panchajanya conch, which is the water element. Hare Krishna. There'll be more to be said about the conch because we have to discuss all the other weapons and it's all interlinked, especially the conch, because generally when the Lord uses weapons, he also blows the conch. He may at one time use one weapon or another weapon. Sometimes he uses more than one weapon for a demon, as we'll discuss as we go through. But even if it's not mentioned, it's understood that the conch is blown. Always there. So, Hare Krishna. You all have a day off from work today, is it? Yeah, mostly, yeah. That means book distribution, is it? For many of you? Good? Jai. Hare Krishna. When Vijay Prabhu has a holiday, he doesn't go for book distribution. He's around the other way. That's his full-time job. No retirement.
Hare Krishna, Maharaj, Dhanavad Pranam. Thank you for the enlightening class.
Yeah, everyone says that at the end of every class. It's something like if you call everyone supreme, then no one's supreme. So if you say it was a very enlightening class, then it's become a formality. You can say it if you like, but it's become a formality.
So Maharaj, you were mentioning about spiritual culture and you told a little bit. So I wanted to know what is the role of man and woman in the spiritual culture?
That's a big question. I have a book called Mothers and Masters which discusses this. Men and women in general, the men take, in spiritual culture, in Krishna's Vedic culture, the men take a prominent social role and women subdued social role. That's it in brief. Women are always subordinate. That's a quote from Srila Prabhupada. Not one of the most popular ones, but
yeah, Hare Krishna Maharaj.
It is a direct quote from him.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for the nice talk on the Visnu-sahasranama, especially the glories of Vishnu as a maintainer and sustainer, and the details were very beautiful. There were some deviations or sidelines, and I wanted to see if you can help me just clarify. At the beginning, you said that women who came to the West were becoming uncultured, but we missed out the other 50% of the population. So can you just speak to that? What happens to them when they come to the West?
Also. I believe I did.
Yes, Maharaj, you did.
And what was the outcome? What was the summary of what happens to them? Sorry.
What happens if we
Yes,
become
like
uncultured? Then asanskrita kriyahinam. When we become asanskrita, uncultured, then we leave all Vedic practices.
So then the question is, if both are becoming uncultured, then what are you saying in terms of like the people sitting here that are trying to become cultured? Is it,
That's
is it like an
right.
on and off switch?
Making sorry for interrupting you. I was making an allusion to what appears to me to be an observable fact, that people who come from the culture, which is still surviving in India to some extent, Krishna's Vedic culture, when they come here, they tend to lose that. I was speaking about that.
Yeah, so for me...
So when you're saying trying to become cultured, yes, on one hand trying to become spiritually cultured, but on the other hand adopting the cultures of the mlechas and the demons, it's something like trying to run Windows software on a Mac. You can do it, but it's artificial. And Krishna's culture is very scientifically designed by Krishna himself for elevating people to the ultimate goal of life, whereas this culture, for want of a better word, is aimed at sense gratification based on ignorance of knowledge of the soul and of the proper purpose of life.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, the scriptures as far as the purity of Bhakti is very wonderful, and it's always nice to have that. And people, in time, place, circumstance, there are people here and women who have to work because just to live
true.
here. But you made a comment that they can't look after their children if they're working. Can you just clarify that too? Maybe that was incomplete for me as well.
Oh, it's big topics. I presume you're quite new to all of this, is it or not?
Well, I was born in a Sri family in Gujarati, and I left India
I see.
for
You
Africa
look like a
a
whitey
long time
from here.
ago. But you know, I don't feel I need to. I'm just not recognizing what you're saying because there are many people who left India. There's Indians all over the world.
Yeah.
And it's just a very broad
I
statement.
suggest to you, if you'd like to know my take on all of this in detail, because it is very big topics, and practically the whole world is divided on such topics, not only in our ISKCON, but even the churches, they're all divided on these topics. Should we attempt to follow traditional culture, or should we adopt to the modern way of thinking? And now we understand, after so much time, we understand that everything people did in the past, all their social paradigms were all wrong, so we have to change it all, and even the understanding of what is a male and what is a female all has to change. So the whole world is divided, at least the so-called civilized world is very much divided on that. It's a very big topic. If you'd like to know my understanding of it, which I've backed with numerous quotes from Srila Prabhupada and Shastra, please read one book of mine which is called Mothers and Masters. In brief, Krishna has his culture. It's called the Vedic culture, Varnashram Dharma, which is meant for spiritual advancement. And what's going on in the Western world especially is demoniac, leads to hell. So as far as possible, we who are fortunate to have as our goal of life Krishna should adopt that culture which helps for spiritual advancement, whereas the demoniac culture leads us to hell. Demoniac culture is based on lust, greed and anger. Trividhang narakasya-idam dwaram nashanam atmanaha. These three gates to hell: lust, greed and anger. Hare Krishna. Please read that book.
I have. I think it doesn't address time, place, circumstance. It's
Yeah,
very,
the time is
this
Kali
is,
Yuga, the place is
sorry.
America, and the circumstances are terrible. Let's do something about it. Srila Prabhupada wanted to introduce Vedic culture. At some point, Srila Prabhupada made many adjustments according to time, place, and circumstance, but his aim was to introduce Vedic culture. That was, he writes in one of his purports that one of the aims of the Krishna conscious movement is to introduce Varnashram Dharma. So at some point in time we should start on it. And it would help if the members of this movement understood that and accepted that.
I mean, I
But we can't
agree.
expect everyone to do
Sorry,
so.
Maharaj, but with all due respect, if Srila Prabhupada had said that and
He did say
wanted
that.
to...
It's in his books.
I'm sorry, yes, he said that, but also let me just finish the context of my question, please. If he had been that strong about the tradition of India then, because you've painted this picture with this very traditional India, he would not have been in the West. You would not be sitting here because you are from the West. I'm trying to understand what you're saying and fit it in with the reality of what's in front.
I'm saying that
Sorry,
we're
please,
living in
thank
the
you.
Western world. We have to make adjustments to how we bring people into Krishna consciousness, but one of the major aims of the Krishna conscious movement, according to Srila Prabhupada, who introduced it in the West, is to introduce a whole different way of life, which is conducive for Krishna consciousness, which that in the West is not. And if I say it a little strongly or emphasize it, is because even though Srila Prabhupada himself emphasized it so much, mostly it's not emphasized at all within our movement, and rather it's de-emphasized, which I feel is a disservice to Srila Prabhupada, because he very much wanted this. That's my take, in short. There is another question. Now the Pandora's box is open and it could go on and on and on.
Sorry, Maharaj. I just want to ask one question. So, Maharaj, being an Indian and lived in India for almost 25 years.
Me?
I'm talking about myself.
Oh.
And
I've been in India longer than you.
so, my question is the future of the movement. You know, our scriptures say that our Sankirtan movement will at least flourish for 10,000 years. So I have no doubt in my mind that it will flourish in India. It will stay in India, it will flourish in India. But my question is about the Western world. When Srila Prabhupada came here, he was able to create a tsunami. Now I see that, we are not able to sustain that tsunami. We are not able to maintain it. We are not able to grow as much as we could. So will it survive and sustain in the Western world, or will it diminish in the due course of time because of the waves of the three modes of material nature?
Srila Prabhupada said this movement will go on if the devotees stick to the program he gave. He didn't say it's automatic. We have to stick to what he said. It's a very valid point. Some of the devotees here are specifically aiming at trying to bring Western people in to restart all of that. You should all help with that. Bharata bhumite hoilo manusha janma shata kari karo para upaka. You're doing a great job in distributing so many books based out of here. So that's the first thing. But then Srila Prabhupada said 50% of my work isn't done by, he said, Varnashram Dharma. That is questioned, that Prabhupada said that, because it's not in his books. But Abhiram Prabhu said he heard that. Bhakti Charu Swami in his memoir, Srila Prabhupada said he heard Srila Prabhupada say that. And even if he didn't say it, in his books, again and again and again, he talks about the importance of introducing Varnashram Dharma. So along with the books, we have to demonstrate how we can live according to the principles in the books. because it is very difficult for people to be Krishna conscious in a society which is going completely in the opposite direction. So that's a great challenge for you. You've risen to the challenge of distributing the books. And then another great challenge is how to bring non-Indians, people from non-Hindu backgrounds, into this way of life. Many people would like a different way of life. They can understand that this way of life they're in, it's horrible. They're trapped in it. We say that, yeah, well, I have to go to work, but well, think about it. Do you have to? If you have to, maybe you could at least do something that your children don't have to, or is there an alternative? Apart from the devotees of Krishna, there are young Americans who are looking at the world and saying, hey, I want to be part of this, and they're going to live on the land. Nothing to do with Krishna consciousness. It can be done. We may ourselves be trapped in mortgages and obligations and this and that, but at least we should look to the next step. Okay, we'll finish there. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.